Welcome to the Even Better podcast, where your host, Sinikka Waugh of Your Clear Next Step, brings you exciting content about making communities better by helping people get even better at work.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Even Better podcast. This is your host, Sinikka Waugh, and this is part of our ongoing mission to help us all have even better workdays so that together we can co-create better communities. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm delighted to welcome our guest, Dick Hannasch, today. Dick, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
This is such a joy. For those of you who do not know Dick, I have had the privilege and the honor of working with Dick for a number of years. We're not going to pause and count because that would reveal more than we need to. But Dick and I have worked side by side as colleagues at an organization we both worked at for a while. And then I stepped away from that organization, and Dick was kind enough to bring me back in as a trainer, where I had the joy of delivering curriculum that was written for that organization and internally to that organization. And I got to deliver some really awesome content at that organization and work alongside Dick there. And now Dick and I get to work together on some really cool stuff where I get to see Dick shine in his space. So he is a working relationships coach who helps people become what he calls better. So I have seen this in action, right? Every conversation that I'm in with Dick has always been a place where he brings something to the table. He helps people understand how they bring their best selves to the table. And then he makes sure that they're leaving with something that they can apply, something that they can use, and some way that they're actually going to do something about it. They're going to do something to get even better than they are today. And those of you who've been listening to this podcast for a while will understand why I would naturally be drawn to Dick to the inner circle to say, hey, this is one of the real deal. This is someone that we should be listening to and hanging out with, because this is someone who shows up all the time, every day, as someone who does the real thing. And so, Dick, it is a joy to have you here with us today.
Making me sound so good. I want to work with myself even.
Well, and you do cooler things, right? You have over 35 years of experience growing talent, and you've coached people from all continents except Antarctica, I hear.
Right.
And you've worked in the fields of financial services, IT, healthcare, agribusiness, entertainment, and more. And you've got a goal that I do not share, and this is in running. So tell us a little bit about your running goal.
I have a younger daughter who ran cross country in high school, and my goal has long been to beat her in a foot race in her even high school or adult years. And I've come close twice. I finished behind her by 3 seconds one time. I finished behind her by 1 second another time. And actually, one other race, I was about 3 minutes ahead of her, and I pulled a muscle about 1,000 yards from the finish, and she ran past me. She didn't even check to see how I was doing. So someday, I hope to beat my daughter in a foot race, but I'm 62, might not happen. I'm hopeful.
But you're hopeful. That's fantastic. Well, and that's one of the things I delight in about you, Dick, is that you bring hope to the table too, is that in all of these industries and all of these years of the workplace and the things that you've seen, right? You've been there, done that. You've seen economic downturns, you've seen people be just themselves at work, and the self that sometimes shows up at work is not always full of joy, but you continue to bring hope. You continue to bring optimism, and you continue to bring out insight about how we can keep getting better. We can keep getting better. And I just really appreciate that. So today we're going to be talking about the thing that helps us get even better. And sometimes this ties right into, sometimes we show up and we're not who we should be, right? We could be getting in our own way. So the title, the topic that you've selected for us today, unpack that a little bit for us. It's 3 ways that we could be hard to work with, but not just that, and what to do about it. So tell us, unpack that a little bit. Talk to us about it.
Right. So when we're under stress, pressure, fatigue, we often fall into communication behaviors that we think are helpful to us, but are not helpful from the perspective of people around us. And so if we can be aware of what are our tendencies for how we communicate, or in some cases actually fail to communicate, we can catch ourselves and keep ourselves on track and help other people feel like, oh, he's easier to work with. I know what she's thinking. I know what he's thinking. I know why they're doing that. If we communicate more effectively, we know our teams perform more effectively. We waste less time. We're more efficient, more effective. We feel better about coming into the office or our workplace if it's not an office, and also our coworkers. They feel better when they know that, hey, he's going to be on target or she's going to be on target in how they communicate. Some people, what they do when they're under stress, pressure, fatigue, they get quieter. They're going to cut off communication. Some people get louder in some way. They're going to try to out-talk you. And other people, they're going to check in more. And we'll dig deeper into those things coming up. But those are the three main behaviors. And then there's some subtypes underneath all of those.
Yeah. So these are three things, three ways we could be hard to work with, right? Three
Right.
ways that we could be showing up in a way that's kind of getting in our own way.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody wants to be hard to work with, right?
Right?
Or if they want to be hard to work with, we probably should have hired them. But yeah, the ideal thing is we want to get into work. We want to enjoy our time at work. We want to enjoy our time with our coworkers. And our hope usually is that other people enjoy spending time with us too. But we sometimes do some things that undermine that unwittingly.
Unwittingly. I read somewhere, and it's been years ago, it had to have been around the 2009, 2010. It was a study that had been done that said something like 99.9% of us come to work wanting to do a good job. Now, recently I shared that study and someone said, yeah, well, how do they end the day? Do they still want to do a good job? Well, I think that's up to us, right? It's up
Yeah.
to us, and we're co-creating these great work days. If someone shows up wanting to do a good job, then it's up to us to help keep them here wanting to do a good job. So these are three ways that we could be getting in our own way of those around us wanting to do a good job. And then the thing that you're so great at, Dick, what to do about it. Like unwittingly, if we're unwittingly creating pain around us, how do we recognize it? How do we self-diagnose? How do we identify that that's what we're doing? And then how do we fix it? How do we stop doing that? That's what you're offering us today. Yes?
Yeah, exactly. My own company, I call it aware and willing, because
Mm.
if we're aware of what's not helping us, we're in a position where we can either continue to do the stuff that's helping us, or we can decide I'm going to change those things that aren't helping me. I'm going to maybe unlearn some things that I learned and learn some new things. And the willingness part, you have to be willing to do the work. If I'm aware that I'm a jerk at work, but I don't want to do anything to change it, well, you're going to stay the same. You're not going to change by chance. You're going to keep operating the same way. So I do a lot of work with people to help them gain awareness of how do you tend to show up. Is that helpful or is it not? I don't be judgmental, but I'm curious. I want to know, what do you know? What do other people know? And if that awareness leads you to say there's something that would be beneficial if I changed it, I will help you figure out how can you unlearn those old behaviors and learn some new behaviors to replace.
You bet. Now you alluded to something. You said two things earlier. One of them is being someone that people want to work with, and that's one of our core values here at Your Clear Next Step. Is that we show up in a way that people prefer our presence over our absence, and that's something that we try really hard to do. And so that resonated with me really well. The other thing that you said though is you started talking about communication, and you said that much of this ties into communication. So let's unpack that a little bit more. How is so much of this related to communication? Where does that come from, Dick?
Okay. Well, as you know, we're human creatures, social creatures. Our tendency is we learn from each other. We learn by observing. We see people model helpful behaviors. We see people model maybe unhelpful behaviors. But we decide, here's the behaviors I'm going to employ in some way, shape, or form. The things that I help people with are actually things that have been ingrained in you since the time that you were little. I'm going to ask you to pause for a moment and just think about who are the people that you grew up with and around? Maybe your parents, grandparents, younger siblings, older siblings. Think about how they communicated when you saw them in times of high stress or high pressure. Are they people who got quieter and they wouldn't talk about stuff? Are they people who got louder, maybe yelled their way to success, got on people's case, got in their face about things? Did you have a parent who was always checking up on you? Did you always have to seek permission from your parents? These are things we learn these behaviors and we're unconsciously learning them. And we decide we're going to continue those behaviors that we think help us. When we're under stress, pressure, fatigue, everybody wants to stay safe. Everybody wants to feel safe. And some people have learned that the way I stay safe in these pressure moments is I need to close my mouth. I have something that's on my mind. I have something that's weighing heavy on my heart, or I have something that's maybe churning in my gut. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to open my mouth and talk to other people about it. Because in the past, when I tried that, people told me I was wrong. They told me I was stupid. They told me I shouldn't feel that way. But that's the way I feel. And if they don't want to hear it, I've learned I'm going to just swallow that. I'm going to keep that in. That can help us keep safe. But when we turn off that communication, Some other people start to think, what's she thinking? What's she feeling? What she's needing? Why won't he or she talk to me? And so closing that off puts us in a worse position. Now people think that we're uncommunicative, don't want to collaborate, don't want to cooperate, don't want to get along. Again, going back to people that you observed, you probably know some people in your life where they amplify themselves in some way, shape, or form. They're going to say or do things that are daring. They're going to cross a line verbally in some way, shape, or form to try to win the day. They're not going to take your no for an answer. They're going to tell you why you're wrong, why you're mistaken. They're going to tell you why you're going to do things the way they want them to be done, something like that. Some people will turn up their schmooze factor. They'll try to charm you, persuade you, and get you to go along with them the way they want. Other people get wild and crazy ideas. They get more outside the box in their thinking. Other people, what they might do is the story becomes all about them. I am the hero at center stage, or I am the victim in the center of the sad story, but it's all about me. And I don't care about what you have to say. I'm going to talk through that. And other people, they learned, hey, if somebody's not going to do, or if I fear that somebody's not going to do what I want them to do, I'm going to check in on them more. You might have a micromanaging boss or maybe a micromanaging parent, and you feel like you're not trusted. Or you might feel safer by saying, hey, if I'm going to be wrong, I'm going to be wrong at the same time as my boss. And the way I stay wrong at the same time as my boss is I go check in with my boss and seek permission on everything. Yeah, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm thinking about doing that. Can we do this? Is this okay? Is this okay? And that keeps you safe. But sometimes you lose your own will, your own agency, your own power. So we learn these things growing up, consciously or unconsciously. And if we get rewarded for those behaviors, we want to continue them. But getting quieter has some costs that maybe you don't want to pay. Getting louder might have some costs that you don't want to pay. Checking in more has some costs that maybe you don't want to pay. And those are especially true in the workplace. They impact what other people think about us, whether they want to hire us, whether they want to work with us.
Yeah. Okay. So let's unpack these. So these are three ways you could be hard to work with and what to do about it. So this first one, let's dive into this first one. The first one is you may be getting quieter. Maybe as you've been listening to this, to our listeners out there, maybe you've been listening and now you've had a chance to kind of hear these three: get quieter, get louder, or check in. And you start to recognize that one of these sounds more like you, or some combination of them sounds more like you. Let's get into get quieter. If that sounds like something you do or something you recognize. Okay, Dick, what does this look like, and what do we what do we do? How does it show up, and how do we fix it?
Yeah, there's a particular assessment that I use. It's called the Hogan assessment, and it actually has 5 behaviors they classify as the get quieter stage. Through confessions time too, I will tell you, I've taken the assessment myself. My 3 that I overuse the most are in the get quieter stage. So among them, one of them is a type called excitable. Excitable people, they will be feeling some emotion internally, but they don't want to talk about it. So think about a time in the past when maybe things have been going tough at work and you ask somebody, hey, how's it going? And they say, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. You check in with them all the time. It's fine. And then one day you go check in with them and suddenly things are not fine. They tell you, I'm mad about this. I hate that this person is doing this. They're making me angry. All this kind of stuff. All this emotion comes pouring out. And people are shocked by that. And people are shocked by that because we've been kind of like the volcano that doesn't have any steam vents going off, doesn't have any lava oozing out in advance. We just blow our top. And when we blow our top, people are like, whoa, where did that come from? And they're puzzled by that. And because they're shocked by that, they find it hard for us, or hard to work with us, because they might walk away thinking, why didn't she tell me something sooner? Why didn't he say something earlier so we could have done something about it? Why did he keep this all bottled up? So that's frustrating. Another type is some people get more skeptical. They have doubts in other people. Normally they're trusting, but under stress, pressure, fatigue, if somebody does something that causes them concern, they start to tell themselves a story about, I know why they did this. I know why they're up to. I don't trust them. They have some motivations that are working against me. We might be right in those assumptions, but at the same time, we might be wrong. And so if we don't open our mouths and talk to people and ask, tell me what's going on here. Help me understand. Why are you doing this? Why are we doing that? If we don't ask people what those stories are, or whether those stories are true, we might actually be missing something. So we might need to figure out, how can I be more curious rather than judgmental and tell myself a story? A third thing that some people do is a trait that we call cautious. Under stress, pressure, fatigue, while we're normally confident and willing to make decisions or take actions, we start to doubt ourselves. And we think, oh, is this the right time to make this decision? Is this the right action to take? and we're curious, and we don't want to make a mistake because we don't want to be criticized for it. We don't want to be wrong. So maybe growing up, we were criticized a lot for making mistakes, or maybe it's by a teacher, a parent, a sibling, peers, could be anybody who criticizes. But when we become overly cautious, what happens is we postpone decisions or we postpone actions. So we might miss our opportunities. So if I'm high on cautious, what can be helpful is I need to figure out who could I talk to about what's causing me concern. What do I not know that's preventing me from making this decision or taking this action? Maybe there's somebody who could provide some perspective, some input that could help me decide. If I can't find that person, then I might have to borrow the title from a famous book from the 80s or 90s, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I need to realize I'm postponing my decisions too much. Nothing can be perfect all the time. I've got to make the decision and go, or I've got to do the action and just try to move forward and recover. A fourth thing that some people do is they become more reserved. Reserved is we're normally interested in other people's issues, their problems, their feelings, and they ask us for our opinion, and we normally will share that. Here's what I think, here's what I feel about it. But under stress, pressure, fatigue, what some people do is they get more reserved. They keep their cards closer to the vest. They might have an emotional reaction or a strong response to what you shared with them, but they don't want to share it because they become concerned that you're not going to like what I have to say. So rather than tell you that, I'm going to keep it buttoned up. And you might start to think, this guy doesn't care about me or this gal doesn't care about me. They might see him aloof or distant. And again, they want to know, what do you think? What do you feel? What's your point of view on this? And closing that off causes them to wonder and doubt us as well. And the last thing that some people do is in a get quieter mode is a trait that's called leisurely. High leisurely people are people who normally want to be cooperative and supportive to you all the time. They tend to be the people that when you go to them and say, hey, I need this thing done, I need this work taken on, something like that. Can you take this? Can you do this? And they will say yes more often than not. And that's okay that they're being helpful. But what sometimes happens when we're high on this leisurely trait is we say yes to things when we really don't have time or capacity to do it. And if we take it on, a couple of things might happen. For us to get it done for you, so Sinikka, if you came to me and said, Dick, can you get this done by Friday and take this on? If I say yes, but I know inside that I can't get it done by Friday, or if I do it for you by Friday, I've got to drop 3 other things that I promised to other people. Something's got to give. So if I take stuff on, I might deliver late for you if I do it on time, or I might do it on time. I mean, if I do it late, you're going to be mad at me because I delivered it late. If I do yours on time, but I drop somebody else's, other people are going to be mad at me. So high leisurely, what they need to do is exercise their voice in ways that says, I'd love to help you out. In order to help you, something has to come off my plate. Can we talk about what could be taken off my plate? So that's a great thing to be able to ask your boss. Or it might be, I need to learn to figure out how to say no. I'd love to help you. I've got these other things. I can't shift it. You're going to have to ask somebody else, or you're going to have to do it yourself. Or maybe we need to call on somebody else, maybe the two of you, maybe there's a boss and a second boss or a peer or a colleague. Maybe I need to get everybody in the same room or in the same call, in the same meeting and talk about out all these things. I can't do everything. What might we do about it? Does something come off the plate? Does somebody else take this on? Do we shift something else? What do we do? The common thing for all of these things, if we get quieter, is people don't know what you're thinking or what you're feeling or what you're needing. And if you don't tell them, they're not going to help you. Or if they help you, it's just going to happen by chance. So if we can talk about, here's what's on my mind, here's what I think, here's what I feel, here's what I need, they can decide, oh, I didn't know you thought or felt that way. I didn't know you needed that. Let me see if I can help you. Or maybe let me go ask somebody else so I can take this off your plate. There's a number of things that get better for you if you learn to talk about that stuff that's on your mind or in your heart or that's making your stomach churn.
So Dick, these are really, really wonderful examples, and I'm gonna push us a little hard on this because this is so powerful and it's so real. And I'm thinking, so let's take someone who is generally fairly outgoing and usually speaks their mind and generally has no problem sort of speaking up. And then they notice, oh, I'm under stress or distress or frustration. You've rattled them off in a particular way. And so they get under that and then they're distressed. And so then they go quiet, and you've given us some great tips. Okay. So ask for help or learn to say no, or say what's on my plate, or talk about how I'm feeling. Okay. So that person has some experience speaking their mind and has that ability, and maybe they've got some tools that they can dig in. Let me give you another scenario. What about the person who is not usually someone who does speak up for themselves, who generally is more reserved and generally does wait until others speak up for them? Perhaps they're not generally the one who goes to the front and voices
Mhm.
for themselves what they need. And they're in this moment of stress and distress and frustration and tired and overwhelm.
Mhm.
And they've gone extra quiet. So they're already quiet and they've gone extra quiet.
Mhm.
Can you offer them hope? Can you get is
Yes.
there a tool? Is there a word? Is there a tip? Is there anything that they can do?
Yeah. There's a couple of things. I'll answer first from the perspective is if I'm the person and I've gotten even quieter than normal, and then I'll
Hmm.
turn around and say, if I've noticed somebody else has gotten quieter than normal.
Yeah.
So if I've gotten quieter than normal, a couple of coaching questions to help yourself is, first of all, step back and say, what's going on around me? What's going on in my environment that's causing me concern, causing me to feel stressed, worried, whatever emotions I might be feeling there? What's going on there? So describe what's in the environment. Next, describe what's going on inside of me. What emotions are stirring here? Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling hurt? Am I feeling alarmed, anxious? What's going on here? Different emotions stem from different problems. If I'm feeling hurt, somebody's caused me pain in some way, shape, or form. Well, what's the source of that pain? What might address that in some way? If I'm feeling anxious, it's a worry. Where's that worry stemming from? Am I fearing that something's going to go wrong? Am I fearing that I'm going to take a loss? What might it be? If I can identify what's going on inside of me, then I can start to address, okay, what actions might help ease that concern for me? What would help me feel less hurt? What would help me feel less worried? What would help me feel more respected? Whatever is going on that I'm missing in some way, shape, or form, I can start to think about that. And then I can say, okay, who can I go talk to about that? Who's in a position that they might be able to help me? Is there somebody in my work environment? Do I have a trusted colleague? Do I have a mentor? Do I have a coach? Do I need to just go have a talk with my dad or my mom? Who do I need to talk to? Who can help me work through that? It doesn't matter what their status is. If there's somebody that you can feel comfortable talking with, they might be able to listen and help you sort through options and say, well, what have you tried already? What else might you try? And really kind of coach you through what are options. Sometimes under stress, pressure, fatigue, we think there's got to be just one path forward and we get locked into that, but we can't see that path. But sometimes somebody asking you some questions can help us see it from a different perspective. And we can say, oh, okay, here's what I could do. So then in the vignette for the person, if I'm the one who's gotten quieter, you can ask yourself, okay, if this is my situation and this is my challenge, what would I prescribe for myself? What might I do differently? What might I try? Because if I ask you would you predict if you continue operating the way you've been operating, you're probably going to say, I'm going to stay stuck. And staying stuck does not feel good. So if I want to get unstuck, I need to figure out where do I have power? Where do I have influence? Who else might have power, influence that could help me address it in some way, shape, or form? So I've got to wrestle with myself if I'm the one who's gotten quieter. So for the perspective of if you've noticed that somebody's gotten quieter, your challenge is you need to figure out how can I make that safe space for that other person? How can I encourage them to speak up and share what's on their mind? And it might sound something like this. Hey, Sinikka, I know I've noticed in meetings lately that your normal, thoughtful, participative self isn't showing up quite the same way. I've noticed you've gotten quieter. You don't seem to be as engaged as you normally are. I'm just wondering, is there something that's going on that's causing you concern, distracting you? Is there something going on that you might need to talk about with somebody? Because if there is, I'm happy to talk with you about it. Like to help you out if you need help in some way, shape, or form. But I just need to know what's going on.
Mm.
So start with some curiosity, try to help them feel safe. If you can help them feel safe, some people will start to open up. And you might have to dig a little bit. Some people might not be willing to share right away. So you might have to say, oh, well, if you don't want to talk about it right now, I just want you to know when you do feel ready to talk about it, I'm here. I'm not going to judge. I'm just going to listen. Come in and see me sometime. Another option would be if they don't feel like they can say things to you, you can say, well, if there is somebody that you do feel safe speaking to, I'd encourage you to go talk to them, see if they can help you in some way. So we got to try to provide that safe space for people. Some people will respond to it readily. Some people, they'll be hesitant because maybe they've learned in the past, hey, when I've spoken up, remember, I've gotten knocked down, told I'm wrong, told I'm stupid. There's a lot of unlearning that some people have to do, and a lot of trust that you might have to foster and build with them. But it can be done. I've seen people get better. And actually, I can tell you myself, about 12 years ago, I was at a point in my life where I needed to see a therapist. I needed professional counseling. And after several weeks or a couple of months working with me, the counselor shared with me, Dick, one thing I've noticed about you is you're great at putting other people's needs ahead of your own. And what you're terrible at is telling people what you think and what you feel and what you need. So she said, I'm going to give you an assignment. And I actually have it in a work bag just off camera here. She wrote an index card, a speech card, 3x5 card. She said, I want you to practice using these three phrases. I think blank. I feel blank. I need blank. She said, when you can start sharing those things with people, it puts them in a position where they can respond. They can choose to help you. They won't always choose to help you, but they could help you. If you don't let them know these things, they're only going to help you by chance. So if you went and asked my wife, is Dick the perfect husband? He's the perfect communicator? She'd say no. But if you asked her, is he communicating more effectively than he did 10, 12 years ago when he was seeing a therapist? She'd say, yes, he's much better. So I try to practice what I preach here. I've coached a number of people on how to use these skills, and I've seen people make great changes in their communication with their direct reports, with their boss, with somebody else in their personal life. We can unlearn and learn new things.
Oh, thank you, Dick. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. So if you have just dialed in, for our listeners, if you just tuned into this and you missed the beginning or you got distracted because you were driving and trying to do two things at once, I need you to rewind, because we are talking about some really important stuff. We're talking about 3 ways that you could be hard to work with and what to do about it. So we're here with Dick Hannasch, and we're talking about these 3 ways. The first one was get quieter, and Dick has offered us really tactical, practical ways to address that. So we're going to move on. We've got a little bit of time left. We need to get louder and check in too much. And I want to not shortchange those, because some of us get louder. So let's talk about that. What does it look like when someone gets louder under stress, pressure, and fatigue?
Yeah, get louder are people who've learned that I get rewarded for out talking people in different ways. And on the Hogan assessment, there's 4 different ways that this might show up for people. For some people, it might be, I'm going to get bolder. I'm going to say or do the daring thing that crosses the line. I might bite off more than I can chew. I might not take no for your answer. I'm going to try to talk you into doing what I want you to do. So there's a number of nuances for a way being bolder can go. Yeah. A phrase I like to use is the bold people. Sometimes their confidence exceeds their competence. Right? They will overpromise and underdeliver. Or from a sales side, actually being bold can be helpful, because if the client says, I don't want to buy your product, a good salesperson will say, well, tell me why you won't buy it. Let me try to talk you out of that objection. Let me overcome that in some way, shape, or form. So they're going to be pushing on that. I recently worked with one client. He said, I like to be persistent without being annoying. Some people who are bold, they're persistent without being annoying. Some people, they're bold and overly persistent, and they do become annoying. But so that's a one get louder type. Another get louder type is mischievous. Mischievous people like to have fun, like to stir up a little bit of trouble. But when other people get upset at this fun or this mischief, this trouble that they've stirred up, they don't want to apologize for it, but they do want to be forgiven. So there's the sort of people that they will try to talk you into letting them have their way, forgiving them without saying, I'm sorry. Instead of saying they're sorry, they'll say things like, well, it wasn't that bad. You know, I didn't mean it. You just need to be better at taking a joke. You understand this is the way the game goes. Sometimes things happen. You know, it wasn't really my fault. Or, oh, you know what? That hurt your feelings. Let me give you a hug. No, I don't want to be hugged. Right? I'm mad at you. I want to stay mad at you. So if I'm high on mischievous, what sometimes I need to learn is I need to figure out how to say, I'm sorry I hurt you in some way, shape, or form. I'll try not to do it again. So it's okay to be mischievous. It's okay to be charming and persuasive. But sometimes we got to tell people the things that they need to hear. And hopefully when we say it, we're genuine when we say it too. We don't want to say we're sorry and not really mean it. We need to align our behaviors and say, okay, if I hurt you by doing this, I need to learn a lesson and say, I'm not going to do that to you anymore. So that's the mischievous side. The third one is colorful. Colorful is I become all stagey, all showy. The story is all about me. It's suddenly like I am in a 1-person Broadway show. Let me tell you about how great my life is. Let me tell you about all my woes, whatever it is. I'm going to forget that other people have stories that need to be heard and shared too.
Mm.
From a sales side, being high and colorful is great because they're the people, they're going to give the memorable presentation. And you often buy the most memorable presentation product, right? Who had the best Super Bowl commercial?
Mhm.
Who is the best at the front of the room? I love that. I remember that. I'm going to buy that. If I get loud all the time and I'm dominating, I'm on the stage all the time. What I sometimes need to learn is to say, hey, I need to step out of the spotlight. I need to let somebody else be the show from time to time. And then the last thing for getting louder is imaginative. High imaginative people, they get the really off the wall ideas, visionary things that they can talk about the pie in the sky that sounds so delicious. They can describe the castle in the air that you are ready to move into today. They can pitch that vision to you, and that is great. But the downside sometimes when we're high and imaginative is we try to sell other people on these ideas. And in our mind's eye, we can see how to go from A to Z. But the way we tell the story to other people, they have no idea how we got to B or to C or to D, let alone get to Z. And sometimes that problem is our ideas really are impractical. We're overlooking some details. We're making some leaps in logic. So what I might need to do if I'm high imaginative is I might need to test my ideas with some people, figure out who are my people who are the good critiquers, who are the practical thinkers. Let me run this by them and see if they can see flaws. And maybe I need to adjust my idea. Maybe I can't build a castle leader. Maybe I can just buy a nice little apartment for somebody. I don't know. The other thing on high imaginative, sometimes I just need to get better at telling the story of how can we go from A to Z. I need to back up my explanation and do a better job connecting the dots. So I just need to watch how I'm getting loud and making sure that I'm being clear in my communication, giving other people a chance to be heard, express their point of view. Interestingly, being high on these get louder traits is very helpful for people in sales roles. Being high in these traits, it's helpful to have it to some degree. Sometimes being bold really can help you be a little bit more aggressive, get farther ahead. Being charming, persuasive can help you influence people in your organization. It's just if we're over the top too much, too often, is where it can be detrimental. It can have a negative impact in our career because people might say, he's too much, she's too much, they're over the top. I don't want to work with them anymore.
For sure. So dialing that back, it's funny. I've heard people, and you've probably seen the meme or heard the clip somewhere along the line that there's all kinds of advice and all kinds of coaching and all kinds of counsel and support for introverts or for more reserved folks to step it up and to speak up and to show up and be more present. And there's less coaching for the loud ones to just sit down and shut up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you're offering is for those of us who show up with big personalities and arms taking up all the space. It's
Mm-hmm.
no secret. Anyone who knows me knows that I talk with my hands and I gotta make sure I don't knock off my coffee off the table when I'm gesticulating wildly, right? I use all the space that's granted to me. But when we overuse that, right? When it's too much, then it can destroy trust. It can destroy relationships. And so being aware of what's happening. And to your point about stress, pressure, and fatigue, if what we do is when we're stressed and under pressure and overtired, we forget to pay attention to how we're impacting people around us.
Exactly.
Then we just go to our default instead of, paying attention to the people around us.
Yeah. So it can be helpful from time to time to step back and say, in this particular setting, with what's going on here today, how do I want to show up?
Yeah.
So on the get louder side, hey, if this is a time for me to make an effective presentation to try to sell somebody, I might need to say, I'm going to lean into that mischievous, that charming, that persuasiveness. I'm going to lean into that. I'm going to be bold in the vision. Maybe I'm going to be that dramatic presenter. But there might be times when I say, oh, really what I need to do here is I need to listen to the concerns from my boss or my coworkers. I need to be in listening mode rather than speaking mode. Or maybe I need to be in listening mode first and speaking mode second. I have a friend who worked in sales for a long time. She sold for Dale Carnegie. And she taught me the phrase, you have to leave the product in the trunk. And so the gist of that, as I understand it, was I need to go in and talk to the client and understand what do they need. And then based on what I hear that they need, then I decide where to go, what to present to them. If I go in and say, hey, here's the bag of stuff I've got to sell, let me tell you how great it is and which things do you want to buy. I'm not listening. I'm talking too much and I'm leading with the product rather than figuring out what's needed here. So to get louder people, they just sometimes need to reassess, just step back and say, what's going to be helpful here?
Yeah.
Do other people need to be heard? Do other people need to be seen more than I do? Do we need to share that, balance that in some way? And so I can dial down my behaviors a little bit where necessary. Or if this is a time where I need to come on stronger, be more effective selling by being bold, being mischievous, being colorful or imaginative, I might need to dial it up a little bit more. So it's reading the room, reading the situation, and adjusting accordingly.
Love it. I love it. Okay, let's move on to number 3. So we are talking about 3 ways that you could be hard to work with and what to do about it. First one is getting quieter. Second one was getting louder. Third one is checking in too much. Now that's easy to see how micromanaging could be problematic, but let's expand checking in too much. What does that look like?
Okay, a couple of things. 2 different types of checking in. One is being diligent in the terms of the Hogan. The other thing is being dutiful. High diligent people are people who tend to have high standards, high expectations. And under stress, pressure, fatigue, those standards don't go away. In fact, they actually get heightened, intensified in some way. So imagine if I'm a boss and I have delegated a task to you and I'm already concerned, I need this to go well. I need to be on target. I need to be professionally done. If I give you work to do and I've lost track of how it's going, my fear that it's not going to go well is going to kick up a little bit. And so I might tend to micromanage you. I'm going to say, hey, Sinikka, give me an update on the status of that project, the work that I gave you to do last week. Is it 80% done, 90% done? How's it doing? And you might be thinking, hey, it's nearly all done and I've been fine. Why are you so worried about this? I might get irritated by having a micromanaging boss. Another way that this might show up is if I have high standards, I might not even delegate to begin with because nobody else is going to do it as good as me. It'll just be faster. I don't have time to teach you. I'm just going to keep it. And if I keep things and don't delegate things, the impact that has on other people is they might feel like they don't get a chance to learn and to grow. They don't get a chance to try to shine. And they might value that in some way, shape, or form. So I might need to figure out how can I delegate? Who can I delegate to? If you've ever seen or read anything about situational leadership, a large part of situational leadership is trying to figure out who's willing and capable of taking on what needs to be done. Let me provide the right amount of leadership to people along the way. So high diligent people, what can be helpful for you is figure out how can I delegate to other people? How can I set expectations and say, here are my business requirements. Here's the must-have, here's the nice-to-have, here's the standards. If I can communicate that to people, it increases the odds that people will be able to deliver what I'm needing, what I'm requiring here. So I might need to just figure out how do I set clear expectations and then step back. I can still check in with people, check on things, but we don't want to overdo it to the point that it becomes micromanaging. On the dutiful side, what happens here, this tends to be where I'm checking in not on the people who report to me, but I'm checking in with my boss or other people in positions of authority over me. I want to make sure that I'm on the same page with them. And so what I do is I go ask them, hey, is it okay if I do this? Is it okay if I do that? I'm thinking about doing this. Is this okay? Is this okay? Is this okay? And it keeps you safe because you're always on the same page with your boss. So if a mistake is made, hey, boss, I just did what you told me. You can't blame me for messing this up because I just did exactly what you said, right? So the downside of being high dutiful is a couple of things. One of the things is if I check in with my boss all the time, what do you suppose the boss starts to think about me?
That I'm not capable, that I can't
Not
do it on
capable.
my own.
Yeah, don't have confidence, right? And so imagine if I keep coming to check in with the boss and my boss is already a busy woman or a busy man, what am I doing to my boss's time?
Draining,
Uh,
draining, draining.
yeah, I'm using up more and more of their time. I've become a human time sink for them. Now imagine that same boss has a larger assignment, a larger project that they need to give to somebody. And they're looking around at the team and saying, who can I give this to? Should I give it to Sinikka, who checks in with me all the time? Or should I give it to Katrina, who takes the ball and runs with it? Odds are good that the boss is going to want to give it to that other person who can take it and run with it. So a fix for you, if you're the sort who likes to check in more, is seek greater clarity from your boss. Hey, boss, define success for me. What are you requiring here? What are the must have? What are the nice to have? What are the business requirements? Ask them for that. And then ask, how often do you want me to check in with you? People often ask me, how do you know that you're having an effective relationship with your boss? And in my career with a previous employer, I said, there's a couple of ways that I measure my working relationship with my boss. One of them is, how little do I need to check in with my boss? And the other thing is, how little does my boss need to check in with me? We're still checking in, but if we've got the right balance, my boss trusts me, I trust my boss, I trust myself. That's a great thing. Last thing on the high dutiful is, sometimes if I check in with the boss all the time, I want to be loyal, supportive to the boss and everything, and that's great. But sometimes the boss is wrong. Or sometimes the boss doesn't have all the information that they need to have. Or sometimes the boss just needs to hear my point of view on things.
Mhm.
And if I've got direct reports, there's going to come a time probably when my direct reports want me to fight the boss in something. Might be they want to change a product or a service. They want a better working condition, something like that. But if I tell people that I will go fight them for the boss, but then I go in and ask the boss, hey, the team would like to do this. Can we do this? And the boss says no. A high dutiful person is going to take that boss's no and go back and say, well, I asked, but the boss says no. And the people learn he won't really fight for us. They won't push against the boss. And so we need to be willing to respectfully disagree, stand up, push for things that other people might need, even if the boss disagrees. Ultimately, it might not be our decision, but if we can voice what's on our mind, what's in our heart, what's churning in our stomach, if we can be that voice for other people, sometimes people will become more loyal to us because they know that we will fight for them. We'll try to provide them what they need. We don't have time to go into it here, but if you've ever seen the Henry Fonda movie, Mr. Roberts, it's set in World War II. Henry Fonda plays this officer on a ship, and James Cagney plays a domineering commander who wants everything done exactly his way. And Henry Fonda's point of view is, a lot of times what the captain wants doesn't make sense. And so in the story, you will see somebody who's very loyal to the team that he commands, but tries to be respectful to the boss. And you can see how the boss responds to it. But it's a great lesson in high dutiful and how this affects how people respect you and want to follow you. So that's kind of the simplest example. So again, the movie is Mr. Roberts with Henry Fonda. It's often shown on Turner Classic Movies, not to put in a plug for them, but I love the movie because it's a great illustration. One last thing on the high dutiful. I read somewhere that John F. Kennedy, when he appointed Bobby Kennedy to be the Attorney General, some people complained and said, Bobby Kennedy is not qualified to do this job. Why would you put him in this job? And John F. Kennedy reportedly said, well, one thing I can always count on my brother Bobby for is if he thinks that I'm wrong, he's going to tell me. I'm in the most powerful position in the world. I can't afford to be surrounded by a bunch of yes men. I need to have somebody who's willing to push back against me. And I can count on Bobby to do that. So your bosses, the bosses of the world, they need people who can respectfully disagree, introduce points of view. So it's okay to be loyal and supportive, but we just have to be careful not to overdo it.
Thank you. Well, I know we are getting close to time here, so we're going to need to wrap this up. And if you are just now joining in or you got distracted somewhere in there, you've got to go back and listen because we have been hearing from Dick Hannasch talking about 3 ways that you could be hard to work with and what to do about it. So getting quieter, getting louder, and checking in too much, along with strategies on how to address this, really tactical, not just strategies, but tactics, specific tactical things that you can do in your workday that Dick has offered here. So go back and listen, take some notes, listen again, and apply this. See if you recognize yourself and how you show up. Dick, this would not be the Even Better podcast if I didn't ask you what's making you even better these days.
Well, one of the things, actually, it's something I learned this summer. I went to a coaching conference down in Florida, and the keynote speaker said, instead of asking, what else can I do? It can be helpful for us to say, who else can I ask? If you see this on camera, you can see I've got a bunch of books on the shelf over my shoulder. I like to read. I like to know things. It's impossible to know everything, to have all the answers. And so being humble and saying, somebody else might know, who else can I ask, is very empowering. It helps me be curious. It helps me keep my eyes and ears open for additional paths, other ways things could be done, who could help. So who else can I ask rather than figuring out I have to get the answers on my own.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Dick, thank you so much for sharing your time and your insights today. We are so grateful to you. If our listeners wanted to find you and reach out to you, of course, they can reach out to us here at Your Clear Next Step. We'll connect them with you directly, but how else could they reach you if they wanted to find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so people can find me there. Challenging to spell my last name, Hannasch. So you can find me there. You can go to my website, which is awareandwilling.com, and that's an and, not an ampersand. So aware and willing, all is one word, awareandwilling.com. On my website, there's actually a link where you can schedule time with me. I do accept people if you want to just chat a little bit, a free consultation, that sort of thing. I can give you some of my time there. If you're interested in coaching assessments, happy to talk with you about that at no cost. Just schedule some time with me there. I'm usually available Mondays, Tuesdays through noon on Wednesday.
Fantastic. Dick, thanks again for your time today. We appreciate you so very much.
All right. Thanks.
And for those of you who joined us, on behalf of all of us here at Your Clear Next Step, we hope the rest of your day is even better.
Thank you for tuning in today. The Even Better podcast will be back with more content soon. But in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast or check out our website at yourclearnextstep.com for more information. See you next episode.